Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Beth Chubb. I'm the wastewater section chief with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, also known as Mass DEP. And we are present remotely via Zoom webinar on December 1st, 2022 for an official public hearing under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A. I am the hearing officer for this hearing. This hearing is being recorded and conducted in a remote format. The recording will be posted on Mass DEP's website. Some Spanish, Portuguese, and Cape Verdean translation services will be available from DEP staff and one other person if needed. These people will now introduce themselves and ask if any interpretation services will be needed. And we will start with Millie for Spanish.
Buenos días. Me llamo Milly García Serrano y soy directora regional de la oficina de la región sureste de Mass DEP, localizada en Lakeville, Massachusetts. Si hay alguien presente que necesite asistencia interpretativa en español, por favor levante la mano usando la función de levantar la mano en su pantalla o si decide usted por levantar la mano, por favor, use la mano virtual.
Okay. And now to Flávia for Portuguese.
Boa tarde, meu nome é Flávia Jacobs, eu sou do escritório do Nordeste, do Departamento de Proteção de Meio Ambiente de Massachusetts. Se houver alguém presente que necessite nesta audiência pública a tradução para o português, por favor, levante sua mão virtual, que está localizada na função Raise Hand aí na tela do Zoom, por favor.
Thank you. And now Zanilda for Cape Verdean.
Boa tarde, meu nome é Zanilda, eu sou o intérprete de Cabo Verdeano. Conosco no tem a oficial senhora Mary Beth, que é chefe oficial de proteção de meio ambiente de Massachusetts, desse departamento que está localizado na Lakeville, Mass, e está ali para fazer monitoramento daquela reunião. Aquela reunião ali está sendo gravado e está disponível para fazer download remotamente no nosso website. Portanto, nós também oferece tradução em línguas espanhol, português e cabo-verdiano, e nós pedimos para alguém que mestre interpretação para cabo-verdiano, por favor, nos levanta a mão e nos informa se mestre interpretação para cabo-verdiano. Obrigada.
Thank you. I see one hand is up. Andrew, can you unmute? Did you mean to have your hand up?
I didn't know whether you were just taking hands up to speak or not.
Not at this point, but we will be in
Okay.
just a few moments. Thank you. Okay. So I am not seeing any hands raised, and no one has indicated that they are in need of interpretive assistance. So I will proceed with the hearing instructions. The purpose of this hearing is to accept public comments on Mass DEP's draft proposed amendments to the Title V regulations 310 CMR 15 to establish natural resource nitrogen sensitive areas and new watershed permitting regulations at 314 CMR 21. Before we begin the hearing, here's the protocol by which this hearing will be run. To minimize background noise and interference, we have muted all remote participants and turned off the chat function. When you are directed to, if you would like to comment, you will indicate that by raising your virtual hand. You will be unmuted in the order that the hands are raised and then asked to state your name and affiliation if you are speaking on behalf of a group or organization, and provide your comments. When it is your turn to comment, you will see a prompt on your screen, join as panelist. Please select yes, and once joined, you can unmute yourself and turn on your video if you like. Commenters will be limited to 3 minutes. When you are prompted to provide comment, please speak clearly and distinctly, and remember it is limited to 3 minutes. If time allows, you may be able to continue with your comment at the end. If you have a comment that was previously made by someone else, instead of repeating that comment, you may state the subject matter, the speaker, and the perspective with which you agree. If your comments exceed 3 minutes and you desire additional time, you may be allowed to provide additional remaining comments after all other commenters have had a chance, if time allows. Mass DEP will not be responding to comments today. This is a public hearing, and we are here to listen and record your comments. There are other opportunities to provide verbal public comments. On Monday, December 5th at 6 p.m. in Barnstable Town Hall, there will be a hybrid hearing. And DEP encourages you to also submit comments by email to dep.talks@mass.gov. Please include Title V and watershed permit in the subject line. The public comment period closes at 5 p.m. on December 16th, 2022. We will begin the hearing by asking if there are elected or appointed officials here who wish to provide comments. Please raise your virtual hand now if you are an elected or appointed official that does wish to comment. I will open the hearing for public comments now. Okay, so first will be Andrew Gottlieb. Followed by Thomas Fudala.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I want to applaud DEP for putting these much needed regulatory revisions out for public comment. I would encourage you to adopt them swiftly, as we know that the existing Title V code is the cause, not the solution to curing water quality problems on Cape Cod. Septic systems are the problem. They're the basis upon which our water quality has been degraded. And I would encourage the department not to get distracted by some of the noise that you're hearing and some of the other comments about the difficulties associated with upgrading systems within 5 years. I believe your reg structure has it right, and that your emphasis is rightly upon allowing towns to make the determination about what the mix of solutions are most appropriate in their community by pursuing the watershed permit. Your structure rightly puts a lot of the control within the town's hands to determine what mix of solutions are best for their community, and allows them to put forward an affirmative plan based on their own needs to determine what happens within their town, what the different mix of measures are, whether there's even a need to upgrade Title V systems within their community or not. You've placed all the necessary controls in the town's hands. The towns, by virtue of pursuing a watershed permit, have the ability to put in abeyance any obligations that come from your code improvements related to the installation of alternative systems. The existing legal obligation to improve our water quality already exists. The watershed permit framework provides the towns the ability to have time to implement the solutions that they choose, but not to any longer seek to avoid their obligations to act. We've known about this problem for decades. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. This is not a last-minute thing that came out of the blue. The fact that some folks may not be aware of it is not necessarily a basis for you delaying. I think the department's done the right thing by going through a pre-public comment process, by visiting the towns on Cape Cod. We all know this needs to be done. The tools are in place financially to help Cape homeowners and Cape towns finance the necessary improvements. This is the right way to go. I urge you to adopt it largely as you presented it, and to move forward and to not heed the calls for needless and ongoing delays. We know where delays lead us. It's been 28 years since you've updated this code. Now's the time to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, Thomas Fudala. And after Thomas will be Maura O'Keefe.
Unmute, start video. Well, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just don't see myself like Andy.
You can turn on your video if you'd like.
Yeah, I thought I did. Okay.
There you are.
How come Andy was so much bigger than me? Any case, I'm Tom Fudala. I'm elected commissioner of the Mashpee Water District. Also, I was the chairman of the Mashpee Sewer Commission for 33 years. I have a couple of questions. One relates to the requirement for using the best available systems, you might call it, for replacing your Title V. I don't see a definition of what that means in terms of ability to remove nitrogen. I'm only aware of one system that does a really good job of removing nitrogen. That's a Nitrex system, but does not have a general use permit. And I understand there's some other things being worked on, but none of them have general use permits. And in doing our wastewater plan, we had Brian Howes, and this is for Papaneset Bay, I'm speaking right now. We had Brian Howes use his model to run every single property in the watershed being on a IA system. And the result was that things were worse because of future growth than they are now. That's based on the 19 milligrams per liter that DEP, as far as I know, still agrees is the average for nitrogen from IAs, and also the results of all the testing that's been done in Cape Cod. So I hope that there'll be some kind of definition for that. Not that Mashpee is probably going to go that way. Andy and I were involved initially a couple of years ago in trying to develop a watershed-based permit with Sandwich and Barnstable for Papaneset Bay. That effort did not lead to anything, but I'm sure that's the way the town of Mashpee will be going. And had no success in working with Falmouth on LaQuoit Bay, which is our other embayment. Question being, if we, as one of the three towns involved in the watershed, want to go for a watershed-based permit, is there any mechanism by which DEP will be mandating the other two towns, not that Sandwich is not interested, but mandating that they participate in the watershed-based permit? So those two questions: what's the definition of best available technology for on-sites, and how do you get everybody on board with the watershed-based permit?
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Next, we have Maura O'Keefe.
Good afternoon, Maura O'Keefe, Town Council for the Town of Falmouth. I am here to convey several concerns about the proposed regulations on behalf of the town. These proposed regulations have been drafted to hide what is essentially an unfunded mandate. Though the educational materials and the information sessions, it has been made clear that municipalities are not required to seek and obtain a watershed permit. The only purported requirement here is for individual homeowners to use IA systems that have the best available nitrogen reducing technology. But something that I learned in the informational session is that the DEP is not sure that the technology will actually achieve the targeted reduction goals. And I also learned that DEP is aware that there are few vendors in the area who can actually install these systems. Those vendors will immediately become backlogged with requests, raising the very real question as to whether homeowners will be able to comply with the requirements of these regulations at all. And the inevitable backlog will create a backlash. Homeowners all over the Cape will be unable to find a vendor with a wait list shorter than 5 years to install a very expensive system that might not even achieve the stated nitrogen reducing goals. These homeowners, the taxpayers, the voters are going to go right to town hall. They will raise their voices and demand that towns seek and obtain a watershed permit. And the watershed permit that looks like a choice in the regulations is now nothing but a de facto requirement because of these political, financial, and environmental external factors of which the DEP is well aware. Now, for some communities, seeking and obtaining these watershed permits to comply may be just fine, but the proposed regulations have a disproportionate impact on the town of Falmouth. Of the 30 estuaries targeted by the regulations, 14 of them are in Falmouth, and yet there is no recognition and no allowance in the law that what is a lofty goal for the DEP to impose on most communities is an impossibility for Falmouth. The town cannot meet the requirements set forth in these regulations to reduce the nitrogen levels in all 14 estuaries within 20 years. Not only is that a comically insufficient amount of time within which to comply with these regulations, but the mammoth effort it would take to come close to compliance for Falmouth would likely bankrupt the town along the way. If the town simply cannot borrow the amount of money it would take, the hundreds of millions of dollars to sewer 14 watersheds within 20 years. For Falmouth, these proposed regulations are onerous, burdensome, and inevitably an impossibility. For Falmouth, these regulations are designed for failure. I ask that some consideration be given to an additional process that would allow communities that can show compliance is not feasible due to insufficient resources, like time and money, that these communities be allowed at the very least additional time to comply. I thank you for your time and attention in this matter, and the town will follow up with the submission of more detailed written comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Our next commenter is Frank King, and he will be followed by Mary Wagon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I think I speak on behalf of all homeowners. I'm a homeowner in Brewster. I think I speak on behalf of all of us on the Cape in wanting to comply with the bottom line here, which is to keep all of our ponds and water areas just as clean as we possibly can. But I am sure that the DEP realizes that my understanding is that to comply with these new requirements can run as high as $35,000 in expense. And if that is correct, you are looking at a massive protest on the scale of another Boston Tea Party, in my opinion. I have a specific question. We've been told that in our particular case, and I'm sure there are many others like us on the Cape, we are not legally able to join the town sewer system because of our location, which is on the quote wrong side unquote of the Cape Cod Rail Trail, which does not permit pipes to be run underneath it. In a situation like that, would we be exempt? since we don't have the option of joining the town sewer system. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mary Wagon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Hi, my name is Mary Wagon. I'm a resident of Mashpee, and I support DEP's proposed regulations to establish a nitrogen sensitive area in Mashpee and new watershed permitting regulations. They're needed. Mashpee waters have been studied by Dr. Brian Howes, a professor at UMass Dartmouth for years. Mashpee waters are not getting any better. Dr. Howes comes and reports to us on an annual basis. They've only been getting worse every year. And in many aspects, we have the poorest water quality in the state. We cannot longer wait. Our Mashpee River and Mashpee Pond is the heart and soul of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. And keeping them polluted is a violation of their Aboriginal rights to clean water and clean land. This summer we've had pond closings. The pond that I swim in was brown and mucky from algae growth. Regarding the watershed permits, I do have a comment. Mashpee is impacted by upgradient water, so we get people's nitrogen loads from other towns. And I'm hoping that the watershed permit can be written, the regulations can be written in such a way that it creates some type of agreement between neighboring towns. Mashpee does receive, and we're due to receive even more nitrogen load. There's a proposed Chapter 40B affordable housing development of over 300, almost 400 units around Peters Pond, near Peters Pond. And that nitrogen load is going to head into Mashpee. How do we deal with that? If we sewer our town with our current plan, nitrogen management plan, how can we deal with this new load of nitrogen coming in? That's my big comment about the watershed permitting. I just wanted to let you know it's kind of my background. I work for the town of Yarmouth. I sit on the Mashpee planning board. I'm not representing those two entities today, but I am drawing on those experiences on these comments. And I also have a master's in environmental science from UMass Lowell. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other elected officials or appointed officials that would like to make a comment? And if so, please raise your virtual hand. So I see Robert Sarmanian. Robert, if you can unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Great, thank you. So Maura O'Keefe's comments inspired me to hop in here. I am a vendor with a general use approval as an IA technology. And over the last year or two, we've experienced many issues with supply chains, with price increases, with tankers being stuck off the coast of California. We try to deliver our product to our customers as best we can. And I feel as though having one technology as stated as the best possible use could create a lot of problems for the homeowners of Cape Cod and other areas that need to comply with this potential new regulation. I almost feel like originally for nitrogen technologies, there was a standard to be met, perhaps that can be reimagined, and there are multiple technologies that would qualify for this program. It just, creating a monopoly for one vendor could be a nightmare of issues for homeowners, and not just on the supply chain issue, but cost. Contractors available that are certified for that technology. So I just wanted to say that as a vendor, competition promotes us to always do better at what we do. And hopefully DEP and this regulation will allow multiple hats to be thrown in the ring to solve this problem, because it is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. But, not one size fits all. So other options could bring better results to the situation. So that's all I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I see we have jumped up in attendance. So at this time, I'm asking if there are elected or appointed officials who would like to comment. And only elected and appointed officials. If there are, if you could raise your virtual hand. Okay. So I'm not seeing any additional virtual hands. So now we will begin receiving comments from all other participants of our call. If you wish to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand and you will be taken in the order that they are raised. If you are calling in, I am only seeing a phone number and I will reference you via the last 4 digits of your phone number. So next to comment is William O'Connell, and on deck is Gary Markowitz. William, if you can unmute and turn on your camera if you'd like.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm William O'Connell and I'm a homeowner. I'm 72 years old. My wife and I are both retired. I think that many families on Cape Cod are in our situation. We're retired on fixed incomes. And when we hear that the potential cost of upgrading or installing a new system can range from $30,000 to $35,000, it's a real concern to us. As you are aware, the economy right now is not in great shape. There's predicting a potential recession next year. We're all paying significantly more for heating oil, for gasoline, for groceries, for electricity than we did a year ago. And even if there is financing, low interest or even zero interest financing available, we're still talking about a substantial monthly payment to meet the requirements of these regulations. So I would just like to share, I think, one, clean water is certainly a significant issue, but I think you have to realize the financial burden that you're going to impose on many families across Cape Cod. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Gary Markowitz, and following Gary will be Thaddeus Eldridge. Gary, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. My name's Gary Markowitz, and I'm a co-founder of SOS Save Our Shoestring Bay. It's an organization representing many of the neighbors along the shorelines of Papaneset Bays and Shoestring Bay in through Cotuit and Mashpee. I'd like to thank you, Mary Beth, and the diligent staff of the Mass Department of Environmental Protection for their hard work on CMR 310, 15, and 314 CMR 21, and providing for this public commentary opportunity. With each passing year, my concern and anxiety grows over the declining water quality and the general health of the estuary that is Papaneset Bay and Shoestring Bay. In 2021, the water quality was deemed severely compromised by the UMass School of Marine Science and Technology. Visually, the water is usually less than translucent, smells, and is clogged with a vast field of dying red and green algae that sink to the bottom, adding to the near benthic muck that's already there from past years. Visitors to our home note the contamination and the smell and have renamed the bay in conversation, of course, in humor, Papaneset Bay. It's not very funny living there, and it's going to affect our home valuation when it comes to resale. We know the poor water quality has been caused by controllable human factors, and that we need to act now to curtail the damage before this bay and many others like it are gone, including the estuaries that provide opportunity or nurseries for the fishing industry. We've known about the problem of Title V and its technology and its inability to process nitrogen for a long, long time, going back to 1992. Based upon the science of nitrogen over-nutrification or eutrophication, and its impacts on ponds, lakes, streams, and embayments, we can no longer afford to kick this can down the road. Again, this is over 30 years. I'm hopeful the new Mass Department of Environmental Protection 310 CMR 15 and 314 watershed permit regulations. I'm also hopeful that the department will find the courage to stay the course and sign these regulations into law. I'm also hopeful that these regulations allow us to expedite restorative actions with additional language prioritizing built properties within 500 feet of NSAs. I'm also hoping that the department will consider implementation of an expedited approval process for high performance innovative alternative septic systems that remove significant nitrogen for general use. By reducing the timeline from 3 years down to 1, this provides a much needed tool for municipalities to expedite their implementation of their watershed plan and wastewater plans in hard to sewer locations. We hope that the department will encourage and immediately halt the standard Title V septic systems within 500 feet of designated NSAs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Thaddeus Eldridge, followed by Samantha Nicola. And just a reminder, if you would like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. Thad, if you can unmute.
Thank you. Thad Eldridge here. I'm with a surveying and engineering firm. I'm looking through all of the guidance documentation, and there are a number of technical items that I'm curious about. Are 1978 Title V leaching still going to be allowed, or is everything going to be upgraded to a 95 or something different? In several towns, there are already programs for denitrifying septic systems. Typically, these come with an additional bedroom. Is that going to remain, or is that going to really be curbed? And to echo some of the other comments, the timing on it is tough. I can say that there's a shortage of surveyors, a certainly shortage of engineers, and getting designs done will certainly be difficult. I don't have to speak for the construction community. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next, we have Samantha Nikula. And I don't have another hand after Samantha, so if you would like to comment, please raise your virtual hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Samantha Nikila, and I am part of a construction company on the Cape. My first thing is, of course, clean water is necessary to maintain the lifestyle on the Cape and just basic needs. However, some of the requirements that are being passed along to homeowners is quite unsettling from my standpoint as a contractor. Just dealing with everything in regards to getting a permit as is with the times that we're in is difficult to begin with. Trying to get an engineer is difficult to begin with. Trying to get site plans is difficult to begin with. Trying to find somebody to maintain a current septic system on the Cape is difficult. There are not enough professionals and or groups on the Cape that can provide the amount of resources and support that is required to make this all happen. So kind of piggybacking with a lot of other people, one, cost-wise, cost $30,000 right now. Next year, it could be 45. So what's ensuring people that the costs are going to stay that are quote unquote affordable? Who is going to be maintaining them on yearly, maintenance programs if we don't even have the staff or people on Cape currently that can handle what we have going as is. But bottom line too is, reading from the notes of the DEP, a lot of these suggestions aren't going to actually eliminate the issue. It just seems like a band-aid for the short term, which puts all the cost on taxpayers and homeowners. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Corinne Peterson, and she will be followed by Laura Hadley.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Corinne Peterson from the Buzzards Bay Coalition. We're a membership-supported nonprofit dedicated to the restoration, protection, and sustainable use of Buzzards Bay. We want to applaud DEP for taking action on these regulations, but I also have to say it's about time. The coalition has more than 30 years of water quality data, which show and demonstrate that we are losing our waters from Westport all the way to Falmouth and on the Vineyard. We've seen this happen for decades, and the state and local communities have been too slow to act. The only sensible way to solve the nitrogen pollution problem is through comprehensive planning, and that is what these regulations are requiring. Establish a plan and implement it. It is only if towns refuse to establish a watershed plan and apply for a permit do the onerous Title V requirements of upgrading septic systems to D-Nite systems within 5 years take effect. Homeowners should be urging their town officials to apply to do the necessary planning, which will provide the right mix of solutions to meet water quality standards. We want to leave the next generation with better waters than what we have today, and we need to take action now. This is an expensive problem to fix, whether you're upgrading Title V systems or you're implementing a plan. But the federal funds are not going to be available. The influx of federal funds that we have from the bipartisan infrastructure bill are only going to be around for the next 5 years. We need to act now. Towns need to come up with these plans and these permits and avail themselves of the federal funding that we have now. If we continue to allow our towns to kick the can down the road, we are not going to have the federal financing available today. The planning is the right way to do this. Towns need the incentive to pursue the planning through a permit. They need to be held accountable, whether it's upgrading septic systems, expanding sewer, addressing stormwater infrastructure, and whatever or inlet widening, dredging, the town needs to consider all of these solutions in order to meet water quality standards. That's done through a planning process. The towns need to do it now. They need to get a permit and we need to hold them accountable. So I want to thank DEP, and the coalition will be submitting more technical written comments by the comment deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Corin. Next is Laura Hadley, who will be followed by MJ Mastrangelo. And Laura, if you can unmute.
There we go. Hello, my name is Laura Hadley. Looking at the proposed regulations, while we are all concerned about water quality, this does not appear to be well thought out or well funded. As currently drafted, it would place way too much authority in the hands of local individuals to be able to pick and choose how this compliance would happen. That would allow any or a handful of local people to cherry pick who gets the $35,000 bill this month, who gets it next month. Also, I would reiterate, and I agree with the comments made by Maura O'Keefe and Frank King. What this proposed regulation does is it shifts all of the cost and all of the burden onto the homeowners and the taxpayers. This is not feasible. It's not responsible and it's not practical. It also focuses on only one technology, of which there are many. In the Section 208 plan for Cape Cod, it's 66 different types of alternative technologies that help improve the situation. We need to be rewarding the use of those technologies and not passing on the cost and the burden by picking one of the 66 and forcing it onto homeowners. Thank you very much for your time. And I would very much appreciate if it is either revised significantly or not implemented at all. This is a broad overreach, very, very broad overreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is MJ, followed by James Morgado.
This is Mary Jane Mastrangelo. I'm in the town of Bourne. I'm on the Board of Sewer Commissioners, and we're working on our comprehensive wastewater management plan, a lot of which at this point is based on IA systems. One of my concerns is the funding for this. And I'm actually concerned that the way it's written now, there will be more delays rather than creating an incentive for people who should be changing to IA systems and would help quickly. And I'm going to use the example of Mass Save, the incentive program for energy efficiency. And I think that is something that should be included in these regulations. We should be finding a way to jumpstart individual homeowners getting rebates for doing an IA system if that's the way that their property should be handled. We should be focusing on, as someone else said, the places, the homes that are closest to the NSAs, the 500 feet, and getting those worked on quickly. We need to have an incentive to have people move. I know a lot of people would be willing to change their septic system and upgrade it if there were funds available, and we have to make those available to the homeowner on a voluntary basis, and then for the first period of time, and then move into the mandated basis. And in the meantime, give towns the time to actually get their watershed permits in place. So I think we need to move forward. I'm not opposed to the regulations. I'm opposed to the timing and creating an incentive and giving the financial help for the unfunded mandate. We need to solve that part of it, and just putting the regulations in place creates, I think, more bureaucracy than action towards solving the problem that needs to be solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is James Morgado, who will be followed by John Andrade.
Oh, here we go. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm a homeowner in the Dartmouth, Massachusetts region in Bristol County. I'm actually on the Upon-a-Gansett watershed, and I'm in a house that actually just had the septic system completely redone for $40,000 about 8 years ago. So we don't have the same environmental soil types as you do in the Cape. So I do appreciate the differences in the region and the differences between the soils within the regions. And I also live adjacent to a bunch of farming land that is currently farmed agriculturally. And they put about 50,000 tons of fertilizer twice a year on these farming parcels, as well as the vineyard that's adjacent to my property as well. So I'm curious as to how the contribution of a single septic tank even remotely compares to the amount of tonnage of fertilizer, which is ammonia-based, that leaches into the Upon-a-Gansett watershed. And the burden on the homeowners in this region is really unprecedented, that we have to bear this significant cost to upgrade a system which is relatively new to meet some standard of a regional type system that is probably more suited for the Cape region, where you have much more estuaries and maybe less farming than we do in this region. So I see it as a significant burden to myself as well as my fellow constituents in this region. And again, one shoe does not fit all. So the fact that we would have to uptake this is in my opinion, a significant undue burden, and the cost is really kind of prohibitive. And I just wanted to voice that perspective, that one shoe does not necessarily fit all. And I did like the idea of the comparison to the Mass Save program. I thought that was relatively that was a smart concept, and I think that might be helpful if we do get forced into situations where we have to upgrade. And I also want to raise another point too. Are we just kicking the can to something else? We're going to stop ammonia from leaching into the estuaries, but you're going to convert the nitrogen to something else, which is going to be another environmental issue. So at what point do you actually have a solution that isn't kicking the can to a different problem? And I'm well aware of chemical processes. I've been a chemist in industry for 30 years. So I am familiar with a lot of the chemistry that's being discussed here. So I just want to thank the panel for their time.
Thank you. Next up is John Andrade. And again, if you wish to comment, please raise your virtual hand. I'm not seeing any virtual hands after John. Oh, one more. George, you will be next. George Dima-Karakos. Hopefully I got that close.
Hi, yeah, my name is Buddy Andrade. I'm from New Bedford, Massachusetts. I'm the executive director of Old Bedford Village Development Corporation, but I grew up in Rochester and Wareham in the West West Wareham area, County Road, where we have Blackmore's Pond and Mary's Pond and a whole bunch of other rivers and stuff like that. And many homeowners and many who have come in and built a lot of the big McDonald houses, like we call them in Rochester, to use houses. So I have not read this particular document that we're talking about. I happened to get an email on it and was concerned about who was involved or who was going to be able to be participate. So I got in contact with Mrs. Mary Beth in regards to having the languages include Cape Verde and Creole, because there are a lot of homeowners on the Cape in the Wareham area, here in the Bristol County area, that are Cape Verdeans. And I think that I agree with the Coalition of Buzzards Bay and the other call just after them, without having read it. So that means I'm not knowledgeable as everybody else, but having grown up in West Wareham and knowing what a septic tank is all about, and cranberry bogs and pesticides and cancers and all the other things go along with it, but also the economics of it. This stuff is costly. I would say that until there is more outreach and more communications with more segments of the southeastern Massachusetts that are being impacted by this new regulation or law, whatever it's going to be, I think there should be put on the shelf. Let's not kick it down the road again. Let's have more dialogue. Let's have more discussion. Let's have more inclusiveness and diversity in the process. And then, but let's also talk about how this is going to be paid for. I don't think it's just the right thing to put it on the backs of the homeowners and the taxpayers. However, climate change, renewable energy, all of these new technologies that are out there have to be included in this, and that should be talked about, like mass save. There are many. I'm involved with offshore wind. We're involved with the recruitment and trying to get people involved within the industry. So we know there are a lot of technologies out there, a lot of stuff happening, and there should be an easier way, cheaper way, and a productive way to do all of this without burdening homeowners, whether they're in the Bristol County, Barnstable County, or Plymouth County. And so I thank you for your time on a subject that I don't know a whole lot about. I'm very familiar with non-point solution pollution, and I know there are solutions that we could utilize if we all thought about it. But that means more outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is George, and George will be followed by Hillary Greenberg Lemos.
One moment. Didn't need to have that camera hidden. Oh, well, forget the camera. Just a point of clarif. Oh, I'm guessing. How do I start this? Okay. Point of clarification on 15.214.2 on the previous regulations was indicated nitrogen loading limitations on residential properties, and it's a nuance, but it was not geared towards non-residential, in which you have a well and a septic system on a facility. It's subject to nitrogen loading limitations. So it wasn't previously applicable to commercial properties. A little nuance now, 15.2151A, I believe, makes that applicable to all facilities with a private well and an on-site septic system. Now, there's been a lot of representation in the media and lots of places, news reports, that this is applicable to the Cape, but perhaps some better outreach with DP to indicate that that's going to be a statewide impact. And perhaps I'm reading it incorrectly, but I think that's what it says. So it seems that the nitrogen loading limitations will now be applicable to commercial properties with private wells and septic systems across the state, not I think a lot of us that aren't down on the Cape sort of have, sort of snoozing on this a little bit to that extent, but I noticed that. So hopefully DEP can offer further clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Hillary Greenberg Limos. And again, if you do wish to comment, please raise your virtual hand.
Good afternoon. I'm Hillary Greenberg. I am the Health and Conservation Agent for the town of Wellfleet and a resident of Dennis. And I commend the Mass DEP for these regulation revisions. I support the concept. I am concerned sitting in the seat as a health agent. I feel that we do need to provide some type of simplistic financial mechanism for the residents. Wellfleet has a draft targeted watershed management plan, which mirrors these regulations in a lot of ways. And I've heard a lot of comments from my residents on cost, the need for more engineers and sanitarians in the area to get the systems designed in time. And I also wonder if there's a way to provide more technical assistance to the municipalities who are going to be reviewing bunches of these plans at a time. I think we also should look at a faster approval process for the newer technologies that reduce the nitrogen more than the general use approval systems, because especially in our town, our plan relies on the enhanced IA systems, which what we call best available technology. There are only 2 of those that are currently in provisional use, and we need those to meet our TMDLs. I also wonder if we could find a way to send more money to Barnstable County to support the RME effort that's underway. My town is going to rely heavily on them to monitor these systems and work on the operation and maintenance. Again, we're very supportive of this. We need to start making changes today because we also are seeing problems in our estuaries, and it is of a concern to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Okay, I will ask again if anyone would like to make a comment, if they could raise their virtual hand. And I'll give a few moments. Okay. Thomas Fudala. Thomas will be followed by Eric Schwab.
A lot of buttons to press. Just a follow up on, I heard a number of people say that for some reason they're talking about one option, one system relative to D-nights, I guess. And I'm the one that mentioned that the only one that I've seen work is the Nitrex system. I wasn't implying that that's the only thing to use. I did mention that there are others that are still in testing phases. My main point was to get more specificity in the regulations as to what is considered best available technology. With something that gets to 10 milligrams per liter or whatever, the Nitrex gets to 3. That's the same as our MBR town treatment plant that we're building. So there's a broad range of numbers in so-called IA or D-night systems, and different watersheds need a lot more removal than others. So in some watersheds, I'm sure D-nights can do the trick, but for both of our watersheds, particularly Papaneset, we have to go to sewering, and sure we'll be going forward with a watershed permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Eric Schwab, and Eric will be followed by Mary Wagon. Eric, if you can unmute.
There you go. Thank you very much for having me. I want to thank everyone for the great comments. It's really helpful. I don't understand how towns with shared watersheds are going to meet this deadline and what's going to happen. Are you able to comment on, for example, Lewis Bay shared by Barnstable and Yarmouth? How are you going to manage that situation? And will all of us be penalized and forced to upgrade systems while we're waiting for another town to organize their part of the equation? Also, I'm very concerned about all these supply chain shortages that are being referenced. Surveyors, designers, approved system parts, construction firms. How is the state going to ensure that these alternative systems are delivered smoothly? I very much like the Mass Save suggestion. I think the idea of a rebate, maybe an improved vendor list would be very, very helpful. I can't imagine myself ordering a system like this for my backyard. I can't imagine managing it. So there needs to be some thought about what else folks can do. Can you simply exempt us? No,
Mr. Schwab, we keep fading in and out.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking as loud as I can. So I can't imagine buying one of these systems and having it installed in my backyard. I'm elderly, I'm retired, want a fixed income. If you want me to do this, you need to make it easy for me. And I don't see that the town of Barnstable is prepared to offer me the services necessary to operate one of these systems in the backyard. So I would like you to just exempt folks that are over a certain age and, take over the property. Yeah. So I would recommend an exemption for anyone over 62. I recommend a clearly defined rebating system so that if we do decide to go forward, many of us would like to go forward, but we just don't know how to do it. That's it. Thank you for your time and really appreciate the effort.
Thank you. Next is Mary Wagon, followed by Dr. Steve Waller.
Hi, Mary Wagon again. I really appreciated Mr. Schwab's comments about, again, how abutting towns kind of meet that watershed requirements together. That's a big concern of mine. I wanted to speak to the Brewster Health Agent's comment regarding simple funding mechanism. And there was also a resident who talked about, the financial burden imposed by this. So what we do in Yarmouth is a US HUD Community Development Block Grant entitlement community. And it's my understanding that those funds can be used to help low and moderate income homeowners hook up to sewer systems. And how we structure the program in Yarmouth is we provide loans that are 0% interest, quiet loans. There's no monthly payment. There's no interest accrued on the loan, and it's paid back if you sell or transfer your property or refinance into a reverse mortgage. So there are financial structures that can accommodate these kind of sewer and improvements in town. You have to be clever. You have to, it's a competitive application to the state through Department of Housing and Community Development for US Community Development Block Grant funds that come from HUD into the state, and then non-entitlement communities like Brewster can apply. Yarmouth and Barnstable are the entitlement communities on Cape Cod. If they wanted to apply for this big pot of money, they would have to give up their annual entitlement, but there are ways to structure these improvements so that low, moderate income households do not have a significant cost burden due to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dr. Steve Waller. And if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand to do so. Dr. Waller, if you can unmute. There
Can
you
you
go.
hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry for my voice, but I feel so passionately I couldn't hold it any longer. I feel that the regulations you propose are very gentle. We've had 50 years to respond to this problem. And we don't own our water, our descendants own the water. We're just supposed to take care of it for them. And with them, clean water is not a luxury. It's something we have to have. And I know there's two people in Falmouth, a home, that has had urine diversion for 20 years. That can be set up very quickly. You could do all that for the whole town of Falmouth in 5 years. So I'm worried that our property values are going down because of yearly algae blooms. And I hope that you won't back off on this. Make the rules stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waller. I am not seeing any hands up at the moment, so I will ask once more, is there anyone else who wishes to make verbal comment? And if so, please raise your virtual hand. I see one, Bill Blunt.
Hey, hello.
Hello?
Hello, are you there?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Bill Blunt in Dennis down on the Cape. Just a few comments. I know the town of Dennis has got quite an aggressive sewerage plan going on with many phases, and along with the more than one watershed area. I'm concerned that the 20-year plan that they will be given may be delayed. So if they can't run sewage through the whole town in the 20 years because they have more than one watershed, will there be some type of leniency to move forward as long as they have a plan? And the other thing is, if they can't get the whole town done in their 20 years, will homeowners have to upgrade their systems under the new Title V regs, spend the $30,000-$40,000? And then when the town does finally get the sewage into their area, they'll be mandated to tie in to the sewage coming down the street. So there's another cost. And then I think lastly, the amount of systems that might need to be done. I'm wondering about all the Johnny-come-latelys to put in the systems. Anybody with a backhoe is coming in to dig up the yard and drop it in the tank that's had a certification that kind of went very quickly through, and then how are they going to be maintained? So I guess those are a few of the issues. I do agree that the water needs to be cleaned up. I'm not arguing that point at all. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, once again, I'll ask if anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. Jane Ward, and you can raise your hand, at any time, and they will maintain order, and I'll call upon the people as we go down the list. So next up is Jane Ward.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I want to say that right off the bat, I echo the comments made right at the start by Andrew Gottlieb and really repeated throughout this hour and more by many others that we can't wait. We need to get going on this. I think most recently the health officer from Wellfleet again reiterated the support for this new set of mandates, and I commend DEP for working so hard on this. But I also share the concerns of many for the timing, and the support for homeowners as well as for towns in deciding how to prioritize and how to obtain the equipment and how to obtain the funding. We've just been able to benefit from hosting a piloting project that's partially funded by EPA and overseen by MassTech. We've just had a new septic installation of a FujiClean CRX, which is supposed to reduce greatly the nitrogen and the phosphate from our system. We were able to use our existing leach field, and the new system is actually a bit smaller than our previous septic tank. However, even with the support from the grant, this was fairly costly for the engineering work, for the electrical work, and for the actual septic installation, which we were responsible for, costing somewhat over $20,000, maybe to even 25. Our numbers are confused a little bit because we did some other extensive land work and driveway installation. But my issue is, I think in the meantime, as we get the watershed permits from the towns, and I would be in favor of that, all the emerging technology, some of which is very simple and very easy to put into play, like Hilda and her husband in Falmouth with the urine diversion systems. They're not all like outhouses. Many of them look like the fixtures we have in our toilets. So I would just say, keep your ears and eyes open for new technology, some of which is simple. The installation of a new septic and the sewering that's going on all around us in the roads around Centerville and Hyannis is very, very disruptive, and it's not happening overnight. So let's stay open for other technologies as we move ahead to protect our waters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would any of the other attendees like to make a comment? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, Samantha Nicola.
Hi, thank you for allowing me another moment to speak. I just want to make one last mention as a contractor on the Cape about certain mandates in watershed districts and the permitting that is required by the town bylaws, requiring special permits to be applied for involving the Board of Appeals. I would just say that that's one more thing to keep in mind when moving forward with defining these watershed districts. What kind of impact is that going to have in the permitting process that we have in place in these towns? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are no other hands raised. One more time, if anyone would like to comment, please raise your virtual hand. Okay. I believe we have heard from everyone who desires to provide comments at this hearing. Before I close the hearing, is there anyone else who would like to provide comments? Please acknowledge if you do by raising your virtual hand. I thank everyone who provided comments, as well as those who participated by attending. All comments from this hearing and all written comments received by 5 p.m. on December 2022 will be considered before Mass DEP finalizes the proposed draft regulations. I will remind people that you can submit written comment via email to dep.talks, TALKS, @mass.gov, and that there is a public hearing on Monday, December 5th in Barnstable, in both in-person and online. There being no further testimony, this public hearing is now closed at 2:21 on December 1st, 2022. Thank you all for attending.